Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Rebuilding Fulham. Now, we are back on the transfer history menu because, obviously, when we left, it was right at the start of August, so we've had another entire month with which to use to bring in some players. Now, as you can see, we've been a little bit busy, not that busy, although you can see we've got a huge number of players out on loan now. Fulham have a huge number of players that I didn't really need at the club at this exact minute, but some of them have got potential for the future, so they'll be quite useful to keep around in the meantime. But I just thought I'd take you through a couple of the transfers we've made since the start of the season, up until now, where the transfer window has now shut on the 3rd of September. Not quite sure why it took until the 3rd of September to shut the transfer window, but it did. So, we managed to pick up a couple of players on loan and one on a free transfer. Now, as you can see, our transfer budget now says 3.85 million, and I will explain why in a minute. But first, I will just take you through these transfers before we start to talk about our league form over the past month. And as you can see from being 16th in the Championship up here, it's not exactly been what you'd call excellent. In fact, probably, yeah, whatever you consider to be the opposite of excellent, that's pretty much been our league form. But let's take a look at Motta, who we've brought in from Juventus on a loan for the whole season. He's 27 years old. He is a defender. Now, the reason I brought him in, firstly, is because we were lacking quality defenders. And secondly, because in our first game, we got 3 or 4 defenders injured. So it was important for us to get some backups in. But as you can see, he's a relatively decent fullback. Or he can certainly play, 3-star level. It's not brilliant, but considering we're only paying half his wages, it makes sense that we could get in some backups. And he has played a few games for us so far, so he's been a useful signing for us. Next we had McDonald Mariga. Now this one is an interesting one because £20,000 a week he is on, and he is a full-time signing, but we got him on a free transfer from, I think it was some club in Kenya. He is a Kenyan international, so hence why we were able to sign him without problems with work permits. But as you can see, he can play a ball-winning midfielder and centre midfield roles relatively well, which is kind of where we want him to play. So I'd be looking at, look at the strength and stamina and teamwork, where he's got everything to a massive level, which is beautiful. And he, certainly in the one game he's played for us, looked fairly solid, although his average rating down here would not suggest so. I genuinely thought he was quite useful in the midfield. So he is a worthwhile signing for us also, and also has resale value, being worth £2.1 million already. The final signing we were able to bring in is another loan signing and another defender, this time a central defender, because that was where we were really hit hard with injuries. And this is Daniele Capeli, which is a brilliant name, who we've got on loan from Atalanta. And again, decent heading, decent marking, decent tackling, determination is high, and lots of other good, decent physical stats, so that should be very useful for the season. I've not actually had a chance to play him yet because he signed for us so late in the day, so we shall have to see how he does at a later date, in the next game, probably in the next episode. Right, now it's time to explain why we have the transfer budget. Basically, we started to get a little bit desperate. After the injuries started to hit, I decided that we could probably do with trying to bring in a few more players, but because of the amount of money that we didn't have, I was struggling to just get players in on loan just because of the fees associated with that. Couldn't sign players on free transfers, even using our wage budget, because of the sheer lack of money we had just to pay agent fees. So I hadn't thought of this before, and this is my own error, which was to talk to the board and ask them to give us some more money, which I wasn't expecting them to do, but actually, as it happens, they gave us £5 million. Now, some of which has gone on fees to do with the McDonald Mariga loan. I believe the fees alone was like £100,000, plus these loans have other fees attached to them. The problem was, we did have one other player that we were looking at. We were looking at signing him from Galatasaray's reserves. I don't know why he was in Galatasaray's reserves, because he was a very, very decent player. But in the end, firstly, he got injured 2 days before we were supposed to sign him, and secondly, he couldn't get a work permit. I don't know why, because he was a Turkish international, so I have no idea why he couldn't get a work permit. But he couldn't, and we didn't sign him, and that really was awful, because I'd signed him up. It was going to be a £2 million deal, and that was going to be our big signing. Another midfielder, someone to give some extra strength in there in case Scott Parker gets injured or sent off, as you will see soon. Unfortunately, that deal has fallen through, and I've now got I had no time left to put anything else in place. So now we will look at the fixtures the games Fulham have played in the meantime, and I'll just take you through what kind of happened in those games. Our first game of the season, we started off against Leeds at home, and I was really hoping that we could pop up with a win here. Being first game of the season at home at Craven Cottage, you know, you'd expect to try and win those games. However, that was not to be the case. As you can see, right here, as you can see, very decent attendance for this game as well, though. To be fair, I mean, the game was pretty even in terms of shots and shots on target, certainly. We had more possession, and for a lot of the game, we were actually on top. But they caught us out just before half-time, and it was a terrible, terrible goal to concede, I'm telling you. We had 2 or 3 players left unmarked in the box, and it just took one of them to put it in, which he did. We then managed to get ourselves back on level terms in the second half through Fernando Mobieta, again getting yet another goal for us, which was brilliant to see because he was good for us in pre-season, scored quite a few goals from that centre-back position, came up for a corner, Ross McCormack whipped it in, bang, on the head, lovely stuff. So, you know, I was pretty happy at that point. Next up, we found ourselves away against Birmingham City in the midweek. Now, this was very, very quickly after that game, so there was some conditioning issues, and I tended to go for the relatively similar side, but I had to switch out a couple of the defenders just because they weren't fit enough to play. We were very, very good to start with, hence why we won the penalty, which Rodallega converted comfortably. Then, of course, we gave away a penalty, and then Rodallega missed several clear-cut chances in that game, and he has missed a lot of clear-cut chances in this season so far. The only goal he got up to this point was the penalty, albeit in the second game. So I decided to give Adam Taggart, who's a young Australian striker, a go, and he was on the pitch for a matter of minutes before he'd headed us the winner. We then just sat back and got ourselves the 3 points. So 4 points after 2 games is a relatively good start for me, and I was very, very happy with the performances up until that point. We did pick up a couple of injuries in that game, though, which is very, very important. This is the game where things started to turn for the worse for us, and I was furious. Because look at this. 18 shots, 10 on target, no goals. 13 shots, 4 on target, 1 goal. And that goal came in the 95th minute. There was 3 minutes of stoppage time in the second half, and they managed to score in the 95th minute. It's one of those really irritating things you get in Football Manager sometimes that really just pisses you off. We missed so many opportunities. We were through on goal, clean through. I think we had something like 8 clear-cut chances out of those 10 shots on target, and Cardiff had 1, and they scored it. And that just seemed to put a dampener on things. I can't remember if this is the game where we got injuries as well. No, I don't think it is. It was not a good start. It's then put us down the table. Next, things turned even worse, as we were at home to Sheffield Wednesday in the league. Now, this was a strange one because they scored really early on, and I believe that was my own fault for tactical errors, because we decided to try and man-mark 2 strikers with 2 centre-backs, and it meant that people were getting pulled all over the place, and that was my own fault. So the reason that Chris Maguire scored so early was probably because of that. Things did tend to shore up after that. We did get back into the game relatively quickly. However, Scott Parker then Scott Parker then proceeded to get himself sent off with half an hour to spare, so I was left with being a goal down as well as a man down. We then tried to push for the game just to try and get a point out of it, and of course they scored late on and made it 2-0. So, embarrassing. Not what we wanted at all. We then had this League Cup tie against Bournemouth, which, as you can see, went horribly. I did play quite a rotated squad for this one, just simply because we didn't have the amount of players necessary, because we had league games coming up, and frankly I consider the league to be more important than the League Cup at the moment, which is probably why we got absolutely battered. Even though we did, in fact, probably still have the better of the game in terms of shots, we just cannot seem to put them in the net at the moment, and that is something that I believe may be down to the tactic we're playing, although I can't see why, because we're still creating the chances. It's just whoever is up front is not putting them away. So maybe that's something we need to look at, and maybe stop playing Rodallega up front, maybe try Cormac up front on his own, get another winger in, maybe in January if we can, and just play someone out there in the meantime. And the final game of the month, which brings us up to where we are, was away at Rotherham, and I was really, again, furious, because we took the lead early on through Rodallega, things were going very, very well. As you can see, 14 shots, 6 on target, compared to 7 and 3 on target. Dominated the possession. They got a dodgy penalty, one of those ones where there's a crowd of players and then you just get given a penalty against you. You can't really see why. There's no replays for penalties, so I couldn't understand why, but that's just what happens. And then after that, we just couldn't seem to break them down. So, as much as only one win from our first 5 or 6 league games, well, we can have a look actually. As much as that, 5 league games. As much as that puts us only 2 points above the relegation zone, it also only puts us 5 points from the top of the league. So it could have been a lot worse. It could have been a lot better, and hopefully over our next few games things will get slightly better. But we will have to let you know about that. Let's go back to the fixtures. Right, so September is a little bit lacking when it comes to actual fixtures. So if you look, we've actually only got Brentford, Middlesbrough, Blackburn and Forest in this month. So we'll actually only be reviewing the next 4 games for the next month of gameplay. Hopefully we can try and win at least 2 or 3 of those and get ourselves back on track for promotion, because I really don't want to lose my job at such an early stage. The tactic is being learnt a bit better now and things have started to improve. The Rotherham game's a key example of that, but only time will tell. That's all for now. Join us in the next episode and we'll see how much better or worse things have got for Fulham. See ya. Thanks for watching.